and all is still go as we monitor our status for it. Good luck and Godspeed.
Have you ever had a premonition, a feeling that something dreadful was about to happen?
No, Mother, I have not been drinking.
Do you happen to have a pair of birds that are just friendly?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I have to go back into the past once more, just once more.
This is HitchPod, a podcast counting down the 20 best movies of the wonderful 20th century director Alfred Hitchcock. I'm Kat Jones and with me is Dan Lipke, and in this episode we're comparing the 12th best Hitchcock movie, The Lady Vanishes, with a movie that the Oscars thought was, well, it was just a movie that came out that year actually.
Yes.
And it didn't deserve any nominations. It didn't get any. It's called Bringing Up Baby, and I think we're just reviewing this one because we like it.
Yeah. It was also we've already covered the Best Picture winner that came out in the same year as The Lady Vanishes. That was You Can't Take It With You, which we compared all the way back with Young and Innocent. So yeah, no point rewatching that one and recomparing it. So we're going to stick with what we did last month, which is a Cary Grant screwball comedy.
I think I've had enough of Cary Grant screwball comedies now.
Yeah,
I think
I
we can
think so.
probably move on if we have to do this again.
Yes.
But to start with, I think you have a cryptic clue for the 11th best movie.
Yes, so we like to do a cryptic crossword style clue at the beginning of these, and you can think about it in the back of your mind while we talk about this movie. So the clue that we've got for this one is very simple clue: a film for awfully thin, shitty preteens. There you go, and that's 3 letters, 6-4 letters, and 5 letters. So
interesting.
A film for awfully thin, shitty preteens.
And if you can, think of one that literally meets that description as well. But I'm not sure Hitchcock did too many of those teen movies.
Not sure there's too many preteen movies in his catalogue. Anyway, the one we are discussing today is, of course, Bringing Up Baby. That was from 1938, the same as The Lady Vanishes. It has an IMDb rating of 7.8 out of 10 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 97%, along with a Metacritic score of 91%, which means universal acclaim.
Wow, a lot of cougars doing voting, I think, in those awards.
Yes, although it wasn't quite universal, because we do have, I've got a review here from Frank Nugent of the New York Times, and he said, this was at the time. He said, if you've never been to the movies, Bringing Up Baby will be new to you, a zany-ridden product of the goofy fast school. But who hasn't been to the movies? He also described Hepburn's performance as breathless, senseless, and terribly, terribly fatiguing.
Okay, so this is someone who does not understand that people may be acting in these things called movies.
Apparently not. Anyway, the Academy, as you mentioned, did agree with that assessment to some extent, because there were 0 nominations at the Oscar, just like His Girl Friday a few years later.
Yes, but Katharine Hepburn had the last laugh because she won, 10 Oscars. I don't know how thousands of Oscars.
Yeah.
I think her first one was 1934.
I think she built a house out of Oscars at one point.
Right, yeah, there you go.
Yes, you can get this movie. You can't stream it for free in Australia, but in the US it's available via something called BritBox, which I assume is related to the fact that on the UK it's available on the BBC iPlayer. So, and of course, if you don't have access to any of those things, you can get a Criterion Collection Blu-ray. It's got the movie and commentaries and old interviews with Cary Grant, all kinds of wonderful extra features.
Yes, because of course we have in this movie Cary Grant as Dr. David Huxley. He's also called Mr. Bone at different times. And of course we know him well from multi-Hitchcock movies. And Katharine Hepburn, the gorgeous Katharine Hepburn playing Susan Vance. We also did a movie of hers previously in a Patron episode. That was The Philadelphia Story.
Yes. And probably the other main character of the movie. Those two are by far the most dominant. We also have May Robson. She plays Aunt Elizabeth, and she was also in a very early version of A Star Is Born. There have been multiple stars being born. She was in an early one of them. And the synopsis of this movie is kind of wild. You know what you're getting into. While trying to secure a $1 million donation for his museum, a befuddled paleontologist is pursued by a flighty and often irritating heiress and her pet leopard baby.
Yes, high concept indeed.
Yes, indeed.
The writers were Dudley Nicholas from Stagecoach. Hagar Wilde did both the screenplay and the short story.
Yeah, so it was originally a short story, and we'll go into how it became a movie based on that short story a little later. The director was Howard Hawks. works. He went on to work with Grant in His Girl Friday, as we covered last time, and he made several movies over the next 30 years. Rio Bravo, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, To Have and Have Not, and this one is a comedy.
Screwball comedy.
Yes, and did have a tagline or two. One of the taglines was... And so begins the hilarious adventure of Professor David Huxley and Miss Susan Vance, a flutter-brained vixen with love in her heart. And the other tagline I've got here is a staid professor, a wild lady, a tame leopard. Put them all together, they spell smother. It's a downpour of uproar.
What?
I don't know why they
Felt
spell
like
smother.
they started to talk about a different movie halfway through that statement.
So here we go. If you haven't seen it and you want to go see it because I'm about to spoil it. So we do start with David Huxley, that's Cary Grant, and he is this kind of reserved paleontologist. He's on the verge of marrying his fiancée Alice, and he's also simultaneously on the verge of completing a Brontosaurus skeleton in his museum, and he's missing something called the intercostal clavicle. And it's difficult to tell what excites him more, the prospect of getting married or the prospect of completing the Brontosaurus. But he's also concerned about impressing Elizabeth Random, an absurdly named woman, who might donate $1 million to his museum if he sufficiently impresses Mr. Peabody, who is her lawyer and is representing her in this decision of where she'll donate her millions.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money now. It's a lot of money back then.
Yes.
100 years ago.
Yes. His chances of impressing Mr. Peabody, however, they're kind of undone because Susan Vance, this is Katharine Hepburn, she kind of bursts into the movie and gives it instant life. It had been pretty dull up to that point.
Yes.
And then Katharine Hepburn just shows up and steals his golf ball and
his car.
And his car, all kinds of things. She's a manic pixie dream girl. She was actually defined by Nathan Rabin, the man who coined the phrase manic pixie dream girls, as the kind of uber example. She's the original. So yeah, she's crazy, she's wacky, she steals his ball while playing golf, immediately becomes a source of frustration in his life. She falls instantly in love with him for some reason. I think a psychiatrist says he loves you and she decides therefore she loves him. It's unclear why she's so immediately besotted with him, but that's kind of classic manic pixie dream girl. Yeah.
It's also unclear why the psychiatrist appears later in the movie.
Yeah, there's a few things that are unclear in this movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, she did bump into this psychiatrist at a restaurant where half her dress is also torn off, and there's a comical scene around that as well. And then suddenly there's a leopard in the movie, which if you didn't know that going in would probably surprise you quite a lot. Because Susan's brother has sent her a tame leopard named Baby, and she seems to think that David is a zoologist. He doesn't know the difference between a zoologist and a paleontologist. So she somehow convinces him to help her take the leopard to Connecticut as an excuse to spend some more time with him. So it's all a bit convoluted. Around about this stage, we also get David receiving his Brontosaurus bone, which he takes with him on the journey. And after they arrive in Connecticut and feels like they've locked the leopard away in a barn somewhere, and he decides he'll have a shower and then head back to get married the next day. She steals his clothes, sends them away to be cleaned, dry cleaned, just cleaned in general, because her plan is to just keep him trapped there a little bit longer in the hope that he'll never get married and we'll just have to fall in love with her. And while all that's going on, Susan's aunt's dog, whose name is George, he steals the bone and buries it somewhere.
Which we do, ever since we knew that he was missing a bone, right from the start of the movie, we knew that at some point a dog would steal his bone.
Yes. I think I thought briefly that the leopard might steal it, but then the dog showed up in the movie and just started yapping incessantly. And the dog became the prime suspect. And to further complicate things, we do discover around this point that Susan's aunt, the one who owns this dog, she randomly happens to be Elizabeth Random.
Of course she is.
The millionaire, and she also wanted the leopard as a gift. So we're kind of tying plot elements together a little bit here. It kind of makes a little bit of sense why there's a leopard. Not a lot of sense, but a little bit. So Baby and George bump into one another. George is the dog, don't forget. Baby's the leopard. They wrestle with one another and play, and they run off, and Susan and David have to try to track them both down. And by now there's all kinds of other characters in the movie. There are zookeepers involved. They called the zookeeper to come get the leopard. There's this gardener who's just this desperately unfunny, mugging person, just pulling funny faces at the screen all the time. We've also got Aunt Elizabeth's boyfriend, Big Game Hunter. This is Major Applegate. He shows up. We've got circus people trying to get rid of a second leopard in the movie.
We didn't have enough leopards, so
No.
there has to be another leopard in this movie, a second leopard.
This is like the meme of the guy whispering in George W. Bush's ear. It's just like, a second leopard has entered the movie.
Yep.
Anyway, so we've got 2 leopards in a romantic comedy, which is arguably too many.
Yes.
So, but anyway, somehow Susan and David are arrested for this crime because now we've got police involved, and I'm not quite sure why they were arrested, but Aunt Elizabeth shows up to sort the situation out. She's arrested too for some reason, and things get really, really very wacky and zany. Susan does manage to escape from prison. She concocts this wild story about being part of the leopard gang, which is an excuse for all their strange behaviour, and she basically just jumps out the window while no one's looking. And then she returns a little bit later with the circus leopard, which she has somehow managed to capture off screen. She's got a kind of lassoed around its neck and she's dragging it in. And that's when she realizes that it's not baby, it's a real savage, aggressive, wild leopard. And she panics and the leopard's running loose, but David springs to the rescue and he manages to somehow maneuver the circus leopard into a prison cell. And that's getting pretty close to the end. The problem solved, leopard found, bone found, everything sorted out. David heads back to the museum and his fiancée from right at the beginning of the movie, she's called the wedding off for some reason that I can't recall, probably because he's been involved in such a ludicrous plot. But Susan does still love him and she shows up at the museum and she climbs a ladder to tell him how much she loves him. And then she almost falls off the ladder. She sways back and forth comically. And David pulls her to safety as the ladder's about to fall beneath her. But in the process, of course, the Brontosaurus comically collapses and they embrace, and that's the end of the movie. So what did you think about this one?
Well, it was perhaps not as good as I remembered it. I wasn't that impressed with the movie.
No.
It is, I mean, Katharine Hepburn is incredible. The acting at the start was so bad that I was really not looking forward to watching it again. I can remember watching this. This was a favourite of childhood because, it had leopards in it.
Yeah.
The acting and the script was so dreadful at the start. The movie was kind of driving off a cliff, and then Katharine Hepburn shows up, and she's just incredible. She sort of steals the entire movie. She's amazing in the bar at the start.
Yep.
She's amazing in trousers.
On the golf course, she's stealing a car.
She's really just such a master at screwball comedy and all sorts of other movies as well. But this movie, she had natural comic energy. Her timing was just perfect. It was just beautiful to watch.
Energy is the right word. She just the film just absolutely came to life the instant she showed up. Just like, wow, she's turned this up a notch. I mean, to the extent that it became too much eventually. Yeah. But from the moment she showed up, we were definitely in a different kind of movie.
Yeah. And it did. We were laughing really loudly in some parts, weren't we?
Yep.
Just some of the lines that come out were just incredible. It was just delivered so perfectly.
Yeah. It's a really hard movie to judge because I don't laugh out loud in an awful lot of movies.
No.
And ones that I laughed out loud probably 4 or 5 times maybe in this movie. So that should give it a big tick. But in between those laugh out louds, there was a lot of strange stuff going on. And there was. So I find it a very difficult kind of movie to judge. I kind of desperately want to go back in time. I mentioned this as we were watching it before I realised that it was based on a short story. I thought, all right, I want to know how the screenwriters came up with this. Now I just want to know how the short story writer came up with the idea that a romantic comedy plot needed like a big cat in the middle or 2. It was, it was very, very strange impulse to, all right, we're just going to have it was a panther in the original short story apparently, and it was changed to a leopard because you could get trained leopards in Hollywood and I don't think you could get trained panthers, so that's fine. But it's just such a wild thing to throw into the mix, like very literally a wild thing.
Wild thing.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how you come up with that idea.
Yeah. But it does make this one of the most famous movies. Everyone knows about the movie with the leopard. Yeah. The 2 leopards.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was 1 leopard. Very
nicely
nicely
done.
done.
Only one leopard actor playing 2 roles. I hope it got paid for
twice.
yes.
Good. It you said as we were watching too, it feels like improv is what it felt like as we were watching. It felt like they were improvising some of the lines.
Certainly some of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it did feel very spontaneous and kind of made up.
And if not improv, then very few takes, I think, is the impression we got.
Well, yes, I'm sure I saw at least 2 or 3 scenes where someone messed up their line and they just kind of reset it, and they didn't bother to have a second take. That's fine. You eventually spluttered it out. We'll just keep that in the movie.
That in. I mean, they were speaking over each other so often, it would be hard to tell.
Yeah.
There was a lot of speaking over the top. Very, and we know Howard Hawks loved this, very much like His Girl Friday, where there was a lot of verbal chatting per minute of movie reel. They were getting the most out of it. Only 10 years after talkies came in, this was a different style of talkie.
And I think the first time I ever saw this style was not in any old-time movie. I think the first time I ever saw this kind of talking over one another, back and forth banter was in the TV show Moonlighting, which I watched in like the mid-80s, whenever that was on. So I was a teenager at that point. And that was Sybil Shepherd and brand new Bruce Willis, and they were constantly talking over the top of one another, back and forth, very similar kind of dynamic. It was very screwball, that show. In retrospect, I loved it at the time. Liked it a little bit more than I like this, I think. Although maybe if I went back and watched Moonlighting, which I haven't seen in 30 years.
We should do that.
Maybe
that would
we should.
be interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that for a long time. The movement and the dialogue, it was just so rapid. It was just a bit too overwhelming, particularly when they were in the jail. It's like, I think we've seen this scene already.
Yeah.
It's a bit long. So it did drag a few
Although
times.
you did call out her gimmick of pretending she was in a gang like 5 minutes or 3 minutes before it happened. You said, "Oh, this is a scene I remember." So that clearly stuck with you.
Definitely stuck with me, and just shows her acting chops too, to be able to immediately dive into a Western trope and just not taking themselves seriously with that as well. It was fantastic.
Yes. So as we mentioned, the movie was based on a short story by Hagar Wilde. This was a story for Collier's Weekly magazine, but it was tailored specifically...
Is that like Reader's Digest?
I guess so, yeah. But it was tailored specifically for Hepburn. When they decided to make a movie version, they said, yep, this is for Hepburn. We're going to try and make a star out of her. But it didn't work. This was a big flop on release, which is a little bit sad. It's been critically re-acclaimed since then. Yep. But not a big hit on release. And it kind of cost Hepburn her career for a short while. She was bad news for a little bit. It also apparently contains the first use of the term gay in a homosexual context in a film. So when Cary Grant is wearing a woman's dressing gown or negligee or something, he just kind of leaps up and just answers a question of, why are you wearing this? He leaps up very camply and says, because I just went gay all of a sudden.
Oh, so that was ad-libbed, wasn't it?
That was ad-libbed, yeah. So, and apparently you could see, because they cut away from it instantly, because apparently everybody started laughing like a split second after he did it. So the edit's like almost immediately after he jumps, because he took everybody by surprise. What other facts have we got from the movie?
So when Susan tells the police that David's name is really Jerry the Nipper, this was actually a name or a nickname of Cary Grant's character in his previous film, which was The Awful Truth.
Yep.
So then of course David says she's just making up everything out of movies she's seen.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was great.
So that was a similar vibe to what we had in the previous one.
In His Girl Friday, that's right, where they were dropping names that were his real name.
Yeah, Archie Leach. Yeah. Yes. This movie was also ranked 88th overall on the American Film Institute's 100 Greatest American Films of All Time. Not sure I'd rank it quite that high, but
it's amazing it makes it onto that list, really, isn't it? I guess it's a spectacular example of the genre, right?
Yeah, and obviously it's important of its era, even if it doesn't quite hold up quite as well today.
Well, and I think, it was the end of the Great Depression. We can't really put ourselves into the shoes of the audience and how much they wanted this escapist kind of comedy.
Yeah, that's very zany. Yeah. If you want to see a zany comedy, this is very zany.
Although I think the title is against trope. I think they haven't really got the title right. It sounds like it's about a baby. Sounds like it's about
isn't that the joke? Like you think you're going in there to see a movie about these two, maybe a baby's been left with them and they have to, raise this baby by themselves. Then all of a sudden, this has nothing to do with a baby. This is a leopard.
Yep.
But speaking of titles, I did check out ChatGPT to look for 5 alternative
good.
titles. So if you didn't like Bringing Up Baby as a title,
No.
let's see if you like any of these. I suspect you won't, but we'll see how
with the worst one
ChatGPT went.
first?
They're sort of in increasing order, but they're all pretty terrible. But maybe you'll like one of them. The first one, Dinosaur Dreams and Feline Follies.
No, terrible. Oh, my God.
Whiskers, Wits and Wooing.
Okay, well, at least it doesn't have a colon in it.
No colons. I deliberately avert the colons.
Yeah.
A Soft Spot for You.
No.
I think it's going on spotted leopards.
Yeah. Maybe that's the best one so far.
Love Leopard.
Love Leopard's perhaps little bit simple.
Yeah. And the last one was Changing Your Spots.
Yeah, no, that's much better. I think that's actually better than Bringing Up Baby.
Oh, there you go. We'll say ChatGPT's got to win this time.
Yep.
Changing Your Spots is the new title of this movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what did the director think about this movie as he was making it?
Howard Hawks.
Yes.
So anyway, he's got this story from the short story in Collier's, made him giggle.
Yep.
I guess he's a fan of leopards. He was making something else, Gunga Din, I think, and that was delayed, so he had time to make a screwball comedy in the meantime. And a bunch of other people were brought in to add to the writing.
Yep.
But it was one of the other interesting things was that both of the actors are really playing a little bit against their type, right? I mean, Grant is usually not so scatty in his movies, right?
He's very cool and charming, and like you look at the
Dry
previous one, his
humour.
Girl Friday. He's like very much on top of things. He's in charge. He's debonair.
Yeah, whereas in this one he was the bumbling scientist. He certainly didn't play it very well at the start.
No.
And Katharine Hepburn is usually intelligent and cool. Now this time she was the manic pixie. However, there was still a lot of intelligence shown through her role there, I think.
But she's
very manipulative too.
Yes, but she is very, she's off the deep end. She's not, she's a crazy person. She's...
I think she's just a rich, eccentric person.
Yeah, that doesn't mean she's not crazy.
They used to play that a lot. You got so much money, you can pretty much do what you like. And I think that's what she really was.
We did see a lot of similar characters in the movie that did actually win the Oscar this year. You Can't Take It With You.
Yeah.
A lot of just about everybody in that house was a crazy person.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Maybe that was popular after the staid, boring era of the Depression. Katharine Hepburn, in her biography, said everyone contributed anything and everything they could think of to that script.
Right.
So that sounds like there was quite a bit of ad-libbing and so on going on. Apparently, we mentioned this a few times, lots of laughing on the set, lots of laughing fits when the actors could not get through their lines.
Yep.
And
I think that's one of the movie did go over budget because it went over time because they were so slow at recording because there was too much laughing, which is very unprofessional of everybody involved.
But it does shine through the fun they were having making this movie. And Hepburn and Grant made 4 films together. I think this might have been the second of them. So they really had great chemistry. And that just does shine through. It really does shine through.
Yes. I mean, apparently the scene where David discovered the bone was missing from the box took 6 hours to finish because they just couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that as being a particularly funny scene, but apparently it was.
Yeah.
Yes. What about the leopard?
Well, they obviously got this trained leopard who wasn't getting a lot of business in Hollywood. Maybe he never got another role. I don't know. Can't think of another.
Well, there wasn't there like Tarzan movies and things like that at the time?
There were plenty of circus movies too, so it probably did get it. Anyway, it had the trainer was right there.
Yes.
Off camera. Hepburn didn't mind doing her scenes with the leopard. Cary Grant, not so impressed.
Yes.
So that's really fantastic.
Yes. But apparently Hepburn wore perfume that the leopard quite liked to help calm it down. So that was a good tactic. Well, I don't know why Cary Grant didn't do the same thing.
Yeah.
But he was not as pleased. Apparently Hepburn reacted to Cary Grant's fears at one point by throwing a toy leopard through the roof of his dressing room to try and scare him. I'm not sure whether that actually worked. But yes.
It's making Hepburn sound like Hitchcock here
a little bit,
practical jokes, which is fantastic. We have a lot of good lines in this movie. Some of them were a bit too hard to even write down because it was such a rapid pace.
Yes.
At the very start, when they meet on the golf course, Hepburn does say, in the car park, she says, "Your golf ball, it's your car. Is there anything in the world that doesn't belong to you?"
Yep.
It's fantastic.
And of course, it's true. Like she's actually stealing all his stuff. Then a little bit later at the party, the restaurant, wherever they're at. The psychiatrist, somehow she's stolen the psychiatrist's wife's purse.
Picked it up
by mistake, and she's trying to give it back and trying to explain what happened, and it's all very confusing. And David tries to explain to the psychiatrist. It will never be clear as long as she's explaining it, because she's just very convoluted.
Yeah. And there's another moment where Cary Grant is talking to Katharine Hepburn and says, don't say that I don't, or she's upset actually. And you know, she says, I love you, you don't even like me. And he says, don't say I don't like you. In moments of quiet, I find myself quite drawn to you. But honest truth is, there hasn't been any.
Yes. that was definitely a laugh out loud moment. He delivered that very well.
He delivered it so well, and it's so true. There were no moments of quiet at all. It was just such a perfect delivery there. Another time when, after the bone had gone missing, Cary Grant's gone, oh no, this is terrible. You know, it took them 5 years to find it. And she replies with, well, now that they know where to find it, couldn't you send them back to get another one?
Yeah.
That was really great as well.
Yes.
There's another moment where when the leopard's gone missing, the leopard roars, and someone. Is it Applegate?
Yeah, I think it's Applegate.
Yeah, the hunter, or might have been the psychiatrist, whoever it was, says, don't you want to go inside? And then follows it up with, isn't it a bit chilly without a gun?
Yes.
Which is a great line.
Yes.
There's another funny line here where Cary Grant says to Katharine Hepburn, don't lose your heart. And Katharine Hepburn says, I've got my head and my heart. I've just lost my leopard. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. All right. The Bechdel test. Does this one pass?
Yes, two named women, Aunt Elizabeth and Susan, and they talk to each other about lots of things, and not just about men. They talk about leopards and all sorts of other stuff, so it is definitely a pass.
Yep, easy peasy. What about technology? How could modern technology impact or improve or change the plot?
Well, it does feel like constructing dinosaurs is a little bit last century.
Yeah.
I don't know what they would be doing instead.
Well, you'd have like one of those augmented reality things where you'd actually put on glasses and the dinosaur would be in the room with you, just a visual representation of it, I think.
Yeah, that's good.
And I don't think it's very hard to keep track with paleontologists. I think even at the time, I don't think Brontosaurus was the official name anymore. And then it became the name, and then it's not the name anymore. It's very hard to keep track of whether a Brontosaurus is a real dinosaur. Feel free to offer your opinions on that by tweeting at us at HitchPod Tweets. It would also be a lot harder in modern days for Susan to just keep stealing whichever car she jumps into. She could do that in those days because you didn't need keys to start the ignition. So that was cars
must have been stolen left, right and centre.
So I think if you're going to redo this, she'd have to be stealing bicycles or something.
Probably a golf cart these days.
No, she could certainly start with a golf cart.
She could hop in the golf cart and you get just as much humour about her trying to park it or pull it out or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a song too.
So the song they had to sing, which kind of lured Baby to them, was I Can't Give You Anything But Love, Baby. And they had to delay a little bit to ensure they got the rights when they were filming this because it was apparently a critical part of the plot.
Yep.
But I think in modern days, they'd probably sing Baby Got Back. I've got big cats and I cannot lie.
Yes, that'd be perfect.
So what about tributes, homages and remakes?
There's a movie. So What's Up Doc, which was Barbara Streisand and Ryan O'Neal. Not exactly the same, but there are aspects of it that are similar, right?
Yeah, well, Peter Bogdanovich, he was the director of What's Up Doc, and apparently he was a big fan of this film. He's actually got a commentary track on the Criterion DVD for this movie. So obviously a big fan, wanted to do something which had at least a bit of the flavour of it. So that's a little bit of an homage. We've also got a French film, Une femme ou deux, which is One Woman or Two from 1985. This is Gerard Depardieu, Sigourney Weaver and Dr. Ruth Westheimer. And that's apparently a rework of Bringing Up Baby.
Wow. So there's lots of them. I mean, there's almost too many of them. So I wonder if they did change the plot at any point, those particular movies.
Yeah. Apparently, Who's That Girl, which is a Madonna movie from 1987, is also loosely based on Bringing Up Baby. These may be very loosely based.
They may just have Manic Pixie Dream Girls, which is Who's That Girl is definitely in that category.
Yes. And finally, The Hangover, which came out in, I don't know when that was, the mid-2000s. That had a tiger belonging to Mike Tyson. So that's a little bit of a similar theory. Appears in a bathroom first, freaks out a main character. Similar enough.
It's good for people who train wild animals. I mean, you've got to have something for them to do.
Yes.
So we have to tie this movie into our Oscar movie cinematic universe, and it feels like this needs to be a tie-in with His Girl Friday, because we do have Cary Grant in both of those roles.
And the same director. I mean, it's got to be the same cinematic universe.
Yeah.
So to do that, we've got to get David, this kind of bespectacled, glasses-wearing paleontologist who works in a museum, out of there and into the newspaper business as this ruthless cutthroat editor in the space of a couple of years. It's not entirely clear how we accomplish that.
But, as you say, Susan could buy him a newspaper.
Yeah. Buy both the business. She's wealthy.
He's finished his brontosaurus now. He needs to move on to the next thing.
Yeah. So she buys the museum, buys the paper, forces him to become an editor, and he just transforms into, just becomes naturally more ruthless in the newspaper business.
Yeah, and she's on to the next person by then. I mean, she's
forgotten.
Flighty as anything. She's not going to stay with him.
Yeah, so he hooks up. Yeah, all good. That all works. Time for the Hitchcock movie checklist. Do we have a MacGuffin?
Yes, we have at least one MacGuffin. I think we might even have two. I think the bone is the MacGuffin.
I think the bone is the major MacGuffin, yes.
But it doesn't really drive the plot. So I also think the leopard is a MacGuffin.
Yes, I think they're both MacGuffins.
The leopard is a fantastic MacGuffin, actually, because it could have been anything.
Could have been literally anything.
It could have been a frog. It could have been a snake. It could have been a handbag. I mean, there's really not very many reasons why it has to be a leopard.
I think I think that's the combination, because if the bone's not at this house, if the bone isn't buried, then David doesn't care about the leopard. He just goes home, I think, at that point. So I think it's both of them. The bone keeps him there. The leopard
drives the characters, but it doesn't. It's not even needed for the plot.
Yeah.
You could just have the bone disappearing and the dog taking the bone and nothing else happens.
No leopard involved.
Like, it's just such a perfect, ridiculous MacGuffin.
Yep.
The movie would be a lot shorter. But when you think about it, not much happens in this movie.
No, it's a wild adventure.
Yeah.
There are no cameos, but if he wanted one, he could have just popped up in the restaurant at the beginning of the movie, gulping at her torn dress or something.
Yeah, that's right. We don't really have a mother character. We have Aunt Elizabeth, who is there as the matronly character. We have plenty of birds and animals.
Yes. Two key characters. I don't think Hitchcock, apart from the birds, obviously, I don't think any of his movies have such a strong animal as a lead character.
Yeah, that's right. And the dog, he's heard and seen. The dog barks a lot. It's annoying. It was actually very annoying. And the leopard roars. I mean, this is fun with audio, isn't it? Yeah. That's part of the reason for having these animals and so on in these movies. The lead character... Is he a typical Hitchcock lead?
Well, he's kind of at a little bit of a standstill once he gets to Connecticut, because he can't leave until he finds the bone. So a little bit, not a strong one. What about characters with elements of good and bad?
Yeah, Susan's got some definite black side there. He's getting married. I don't care. I think I'm in love with him. She's not sure. She still wants to ruin his wedding.
Yep.
She doesn't care if her dog takes the bone.
And she didn't presumably see the original scene of the movie where his fiancée said, well, this is just a business arrangement. I don't actually want to have any kind of relationship with you at all. This is just so you can keep working in the museum.
And it was cleverly done for the censors, that scene, because she basically says no domestic entanglements, but everyone knows exactly what she means when he replies with, you don't want children? Nope. And it's like, okay, is this going to actually be a proper marriage? He's losing interest at that point. Anyway, the mistaken identity is really the leopard. So that's good too.
Yes.
And we've already talked about whether Susan is a little brighter than we think. So she's kind of the smart young woman.
Yeah, just about, I guess. Definitely got bumbling cops.
No,
they are world-class bumbling. They first... the first time we see the cops is when Susan's in the car and she's parked beside a fire hydrant or something, and he tries to tell her to drive away, and she just drives away in a different car that Baby's left into. So
that's right. He's trying to give her a ticket and she goes, no, that's not even my car. And then she just hops in another car.
Yeah, very strange movie. We do have a chair fight in the sense that I think on at least a couple of occasions when the leopard was in the vicinity, somebody picked up a chair and tried to use that, circus style to keep the leopard at bay.
Yeah, good work.
Chair fight?
No real staircases. I mean, they're outdoors most of the time. Yeah. They're on the run. They're in cars. They're playing golf.
I think the ladder at the end is a staircase when she's on top of the ladder.
Well, it's certainly symbolic, and particularly when it starts to wave around a little bit. What other tropes did we have?
All right, so courtesy of of TV tropes, we've got the absent-minded professor, of course. This is Cary Grant. The acclaimed flop. So as we mentioned, a big box office flop, but later acclaimed. We've got achievements in ignorance. This is when Susan manages to capture the dangerous leopard and return it to the police station because she doesn't know that it's a wild animal. She thinks it's just baby. We've got the disposable fiancé from the very beginning. Got rid of her quickly. We've got a very rare male example of the trope called the glasses come off. So
suddenly they're handsome.
Suddenly he's very handsome. We've got the motor mouth. We've got never work with children or animals. So this is
That's good.
a subverted example of that one. We've got the star derailing role. So this was how Hepburn was labelled box office poison after the flop of this movie.
Interesting.
Cary Grant wasn't labelled box office poison.
course.
It was all blamed on
It's only women
Catherine
who are
Hepburn.
ever poison.
Yes. And as we mentioned, technology marches on. Lots of jokes rely on the fact that you could just drive anyone else's car because you didn't need keys to start them. So they're the main ones. So what can we learn by comparing this movie to The Lady Vanishes?
I mean, we did have a few slapstick elements in The Lady Vanishes.
Particularly when they were in that carriage with all the...
Yes, exactly.
Senor Doppo, was that his name?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, neither of them won Oscars, so they should have been a bit more like, you can't take it with you if they wanted to grab that. There were similarities, right?
Yeah.
There were two characters who were looking for something.
Yes.
Something that had vanished and escaped and so on. So I guess they had that in common.
Yeah, both movies had a young couple and an older woman as kind of the three main characters. And yeah, as you mentioned, they both had somebody in the title disappearing as a key plot point. Which the Oscars clearly just don't like. They don't like a titular element just disappearing from the movie, even if you say that's the premise of the movie, as in The Lady Vanishes.
But I think the main difference between these two movies for me is that The Lady Vanishes has a plot and Bringing Up Baby does not have a plot. Yeah. And so that's one of the main irritations with the movie. It's like, where is this going? Yep. Why do we care? What's going on here?
Yeah, this felt more like a whole series of skits rather than like they're very loosely tied together, all the different scenes. There's not much going on. And apparently neither of them were acceptable to the Oscars because neither of them won. So
Fair enough.
So apparently we've got to get rid of all the eccentric side characters as well. The Oscars don't like that, despite the fact they gave the best movie to a movie which is everything
full of eccentric side characters.
So,
I mean, both of these main characters would have fit nicely into those houses.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a mystery why neither of these movies were nominated. Well. So, sorry, we haven't taught you anything about why they didn't win the Oscars this time around.
We don't know. We know why they didn't. Well, we know why this one didn't win. Wasn't good enough.
Yes. We have already ranked You Can't Take It With You in our list of Oscar movies.
So it's number 6 out of 8 for you, and it's number 4 out of 8 for me.
I'm impressed you've got it that high. Where would you rank? Like, this won't be part of the official rankings. Where would you rank Bringing Up Baby, and also compared to His Girl Friday?
I'm struggling with whether I would put it above or below You Can't Take It With You. It's definitely above The Godfather. So maybe I'm either putting it at number 4 or number 5. I'm not entirely sure. Definitely below Gaslight, Rebecca and Wings. It's down below that. I think it might be below You Can't Take It With You, to be honest.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I have The Godfather, Gaslight, Rebecca, Wings are my top 4. And then I'd probably put Bringing Up Baby. And I might actually put Bringing Up Baby ahead of His Girl Friday. I'm not sure. I found the back half of His Girl Friday once they were in that newspaper room. I found that all got a bit dull. Yes. I found this all just kind of weird and mind-boggling, but it did make me laugh out loud a few times. So I'm giving it bonus points for that. Anyway, they're all better than Marty, You Can't Take It With You, Around the World in 80 Days and The Lost Weekend. Yeah. So what will our next movie be? So our listeners have voted our Hitchcock movies in order, and this will be the 11th best Hitchcock movie. Yes. And the cryptic clue was a film for awfully thin, shitty preteens. Yes. 3, and then 6-4 and 5. So I think that the word awfully is referring to an anagram of the following characters. Shitty, thin preteens. Fantastic anagram. And that rearrange all them and you get the 39 steps. 1935. Yes. So I had this 14th originally on my list. You had a number 4. Yeah, I love the 39 steps. Yes. So maybe we'll bump it higher in our rewatch, but we will let you know for sure. It'd be hard for me to bump it higher. I might come down. Maybe. But we will let you know after we watch it next month. So if if you do have any questions or feedback on the 39 steps, you can email them into us, feedback@hitchpodonline.com, and we will do our best to answer them in the next episode.
And if you'd like to read a book called The 39 Steps, there is one by John Buchan, and that's from 1915, and you can get it because it's public domain.
Yep, free.
So in the show notes there will be a link to this, standardebooks.org, and so this one will be read for the book club as well.
Yes, and so if you are a patron, you can join in on the book club reading of the 39 steps by going to patreon.com/HitchPod. See where Hitchcock made, no doubt, thousands of changes from the original material. But that is something that we will talk about next month, and we will speak to you then.
Thank you for listening to HitchPod. Please come and talk to us on Twitter at HitchPodTweets or on Facebook by searching for HitchPod. And you can also email us directly at feedback@hitchpodonline.com. And if you want more Hitchcock content, please consider becoming a HitchPod supporter. Just go to patreon.com/HitchPod. And for as little as $2 a month, you can get access to our Season 1 coverage of every single Hitchcock movie, as well as bonus episodes on Hitchcock-esque movies. Invitations also to watch live rewatches and much, much more.